Today I'm going to show you how to use the pen tool in Illustrator. To begin with, I created 3 shapes. I put them on their own layer and I locked them, and then I added a layer above it for tracing my shapes. My pen tool is the third tool down on the left-hand side of the toolbar. If you don't see your pen tool here, go to Window on the top toolbar, go to Toolbars, Toolbars Advanced, and that's the toolbar that we're using today. Now, when you use the pen tool, you want to have none as the fill and then a stroke color. The stroke color can be anything you want. So I'm going to click on this none box so I have no fill and just a black stroke. And I'm still on my pen tool. I'm going to start by tracing the rectangle because it's the easiest shape. It's all straight edges. To begin with, I click and let go on the far left corner. Notice the point there. As I drag away from it, notice I have a string attached to it. That string is telling me where I'm going next. So with the straight edges, it lets me know if I'm even or not. So I'm going to click and let go on this right point. I'm going to pull down, click and let go on the bottom right. I'm just using my mouse to click and let go. Come to this far bottom left, click and let go, and now I'm almost done. I'm going to stop and start on the same point. So I'm going to come back to this very first point that I made, and I'm going to click and let go. Now, if I take my black selection arrow, click on this line and move it, you can see that I outlined this rectangle. That was pretty easy. Outlining a circle with the pen tool is a little bit more complicated. There's some extra steps involved. So I'm going to start by clicking and letting go on the top center of my circle. So I'm going to click and let go. I have a point just like I did when I traced my rectangle, and I have a string attached to it. Now, I'm going to come to the right center, or what I think is the right center, and I'm going to click and hold with my mouse. I'm not going to let go. So I'm going to hold. I'm moving my mouse up and down right now. Now I'm moving my mouse left and right. This string that you see coming out both edges is called a handlebar. That handlebar lets me get my curve to line up. See how lovely that is? That matches the circle perfect. But this half of the handlebar is going to cause problems, so I have to get rid of it. So I'm going to come back to this point that I just drew, and I'm going to click and let go. You'll see that this handlebar disappears. So I'm going to click and let go with my mouse. Handlebar disappeared. Now I'm going to come a little bit farther over. I'm going to click and hold. I'm moving my mouse left and right, up and down. So you don't have to move it a lot, but just enough that you get that curve. Once you get the curve, you let go of your mouse. Now, remember, I have to get rid of this half of the handlebar, so I'm going to click and let go. It disappears. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click and hold. Move my mouse up and down, a little left and right until I've got that curve, and I let go. Click and let go to get rid of that part of the handlebar. Now, this is where I started. Remember I said with the rectangle, you start and end on the same point. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click and hold with my mouse. I'm going to get that curve, and I'm going to let go. Now, if I take my black selection arrow and click on this and move it out of the way, I have a circle. So that's straight edges, this is curved edges. This is all kinds of funky edges. So I'm going to come back to my pen tool. I can start anywhere I want to on here. I'm going to start here. I'm going to click and let go. I'm going to click and hold, try to match that curve. Now see how I didn't quite match it? I can hit Control-Z on my computer, and it will get rid of that point, and I can start over. So I'm going to start a little lower. Now I'm going to click and hold. That's a nice tight curve. I'm going to click and let go to get rid of my handlebar. I'm going to come up here, click and hold. Click and let go to get rid of my handlebar. Oops, you see that right there? I messed up. I didn't actually click on the right point. So watch me again. I'm going to Control-Z, Control-Z. Now I'm going to make sure I click right on that point. Okay, now I can come over here and click and hold, and I don't have that extra weird line. So click and let go, click and hold, click and hold, click and let go, 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 and then click and hold on that very first point and let go. Now, I am going to hide my bottom layer, and you can see that I have 3 outline shapes, all drawn with the pen tool. What I'm going to do is review what we learned in class yesterday, which is how to change fill and stroke colors, how to add different patterns and brushes. So you take your black selection or that top left black arrow, highlight a shape. I can come over here to my fill. Remember, this is fill, the solid square. Stroke is the outline square. I'm going to double click on my fill. I'm going to pick a fill color. I'm going to double click on my stroke, pick a stroke color. To change the size of my stroke, I go to my stroke panel and I can hit the up arrow to change that. Now let's say I want to have a fun brush on the outside of my circle. So I'm changing the fill and stroke colors. Now I'm going to locate my brushes. My brushes are right here. Remember, there are some default brushes you can click on, but I want to download the brush library. So I'm going to come to the 3 little lines. Brushes tab is here, 3 little lines to the right. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to select Open Brush Library. I'm going to go Artistic Watercolor. See all of these brushes that appear? And as I click on them, you can see they're kind of transparent and interact like watercolor would, hence the name. I'm going to grab this tab that says Artistic Watercolor. I'm going to move it over to my brushes until it goes blue. See how it's going blue? I'm going to let go, and now I've got them in the same grouping. I can also grab them and drag them back into my toolbar. Now, with my funny shape, I want to put a pattern on the inside of it. So to do that, I'm going to put my fill in the front, and I'm going to find swatches. Here's my swatches. Now, swatches have default basic colors. It's got some gradients on it, and it has patterns. I want to download my own patterns. So again, here's swatches. Here's the 3 little lines to the right of it. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to open my swatch library. I'm going to Patterns, Basic Graphics Textures. Now, you can find any of the patterns you want to, but this one has a lot of fun things to interact with. And these are great for adding textures to things that you draw in Illustrator. So I'm going to keep it on this one. I'm going to grab my tab. I'm going to pull it up until it goes blue on my swatches, and now they're docked together. And I'm going to drag it over here. Now, with the swatches, the nice thing is when you use a pattern, it's usually transparent and you can see through it, which is a nice effect for things. One other tool we used yesterday was the Paintbrush, 5 down on the right across from your shape tool. And you can click and drag with your paintbrush. You can draw shapes with your paintbrush. Now, if you want to add a fill to anything you've painted, I'm going to double click here, pick a color for my fill. On squiggly lines, it's going to go weird because it doesn't know where the inside of the fill is supposed to be. But if you draw an enclosed shape and then fill it in, it'll fill it in with a pretty nice solid. So just remember that if the line you drew with the paintbrush is not a shape, you only want a stroke, no fill. But if you draw something with a paintbrush that's enclosed, then you can put a fill inside of it. One last thing I'm going to show you real quick is how to draw a gradient. So I've drawn a rectangle right here, and as a quick reminder, underneath the rectangle, you have all of these other shapes that you can use to draw with. What I'm interested in is putting a gradient here. So underneath my fill and my stroke, I have solid color, I have a gradient, and I have none. So what I want to do is I want to pick the gradient underneath here. Notice that it just turned into a gradient. Now, I need to find my gradient panel, and I need to find my color panel because I'm going to change the color of this gradient. So on my gradient panel, this is your slider bar. These are your little radio buttons. I'm going to click inside this white button. Once I click inside that button, I'm coming over to my color. I want to make sure my 3 little lines that I'm on RGB. I can pull my color down so I can see more options. And then I can click on a color. See how the gradient just changed? I got rid of that white. I can move my arrow underneath the slider. See how that plus sign appears? I can click and let go. I can add another color. I can click and let go. I can add another color. If I don't want the black, I can click and hold and drag it away. I can also alter how the gradient looks by moving the slider bar, the circles, the little buttons underneath. I can also move the little diamonds that are above it, and that will affect it. Lastly, I have a little angle here, and I can change the angle of my gradient. So there's all kinds of things you can do with that. Alright, that is the basics of drawing with the pen tool, drawing shapes, using your paintbrush, having different brushes, and making gradients. If you have any questions, let me know.